Hey crypto enthusiasts, welcome to another video. We're going to be starting this video off looking a little bit into the life and work of Richard Wyckoff. He has been a pioneer in the technical approach to studying the stock market, just basically using price action, volume, and time to speculate in the future, either growth or decline of really any asset. This particular instance, it was mainly the stock market, but we're currently using it in the cryptocurrency market. It's basically just understanding demand supply, and that's really just people's psychology. So looking a little bit into this, he was born on 1837, died in 1934. So a little bit after the peak of the late 20s. That popped in 29, so I'm sure he was positioning himself for kind of the depression or the deflationary period that was currently in place when he was unfortunately passing away there. But he was an early 20th century pioneer in the technical approach. Like we said, he's considered one of 5 titans of technical analysis, and at age 15 he took a job as a stock runner for a New York brokerage. Afterwards, while still in his 20s, he became the head of his own firm. Wyckoff was an avid student of the markets as well as an active tape reader and trader. He observed markets activities and campaigns of the legendary stock operators of his time, including J.P. Morgan and Jesse Livermore. So to not get too deep into it, he really mainly just looks at the price action, the volume, as well as the time frame and time in order to get an understanding of the either supply or demand, and he looks at accumulation and distribution zones using that data. And our view is this is the Wyckoff schematic, and the initial thought of the accumulation zone I thought looks very familiar to the one in what we're seeing right now in terms of the consolidation. And Julio within our Discord actually was the main person who pointed it out. So big shout out to Julio, who said, who hinted at the Wyckoff schematics. I do believe that it looks pretty solid. I am bullish for Bitcoin, not just due to this reason, looking from not really this specific situation, but more of like my personal technical analysis approach. I do think it still looks bullish. We've been indicating that 30K zone has been a key level of support that we are going to be holding. From a volume approach, we are looking at other indicators like the smart money or whales, looking at the 4 largest shorts and 4 largest longs, looking at the decreasing amount of supply coming in from the whales, from the institutional level, for the percent open shorts. And then we also see a very low delta recently, which is an indication of the decreasing selling pressure, increasing buying pressure, which is creating a low amount of distance between the selling pressure, buying pressure, and you want low delta when we're seeing squeezes and basically whales not dumping and buying the dip. That's really what we're going to be looking for from the CoT analysis point of view. But this is going to be the Wyckoff accumulation structure that, in my opinion, looks very similar to what we're currently seeing within the market for Bitcoin. So after a pretty significant sell-off, we'll take a quick look at the what each of the abbreviations are, but in short, you see a phase A, B, C, D, and E. I currently think we're in a phase D, where you see a big push to the downside. You see kind of a second stab. I believe they call it a secondary test. We'll do a quick look here. Preliminary support, where substantial buying begins to provide pronounced support after the prolonged down move. That's basically where we were at in around mid-May, all the way to the bottom that we had at 30K from like the 65K. Volume increases and price spread widens, signaling the down move may be approaching to an end. Selling climax, the point in which the widening spread and selling pressure usually climaxes in heavier panicky sellers by the public by being absorbed by large professional interest at or near a bottom. Often price will close well off the lows in a SC, a selling climax, reflecting the buying and these large interests. We're not going to go through it, but overall we are looking for this sort of structure where you see that last spring test before the strong push to the upside, and I think that's where we bottomed for that final low at 30K. And we'll take this off right here and then discuss this while we're looking both at the picture. I posted this on the Discord. That's why we have both the photo of the price of BTC as well as the Wyckoff accumulation schematic. But we're going to be comparing it to the live chart of BTC right now. So phase A, massive push to the downside. This was from like the 60, let's say the neckline around 47, 48K, but from the highs it was around like 64, 65, I believe it was just under. So from that prolonged downward period, you see a final climax. Let's get our volume in here. So let's go indicators and look at the volume. Oh, not that one. Let's look at the BTC EMA volume right there. So let's close this. We're going to be looking at the climactic volume. We haven't seen this much volume since like not even for a while. Let's see, the last time was in May of 2020 within the COVID crash. So it was a major climactic event that occurred within the volume, right? Let's continue on looking at this. We see a pullback and a second test. We saw that second test here. And then let's draw a picture and just represent it a little bit better. Zooming in. All right, and then let's get our snip tool and discuss what happened here. So this is the prolonged downward period, This is a climactic period. This is the climactic period. And then we see a big rally up and then a second test. Big rally up, second test, made a higher low than the previous low. Great to see, making higher highs and higher lows. And then we see a prolonged period of slight consolidation before our second test. Slight consolidation before our second test. This is that second test right here, confluting with here with some downward to the upside after our second high. So it's looking very similar overall. And then from this point right here, kind of mid in phase B, we see another rally all the way to the top of the level of resistance right here. That key level of resistance that we're seeing, which is exactly what we got. And then we see from that rally high, we got to move all the way down, which is going to be basically demolishing all confidence of the buyers and the bulls, which is literally exactly what we got all the way until a kind of final capitulation event. But there's less volume than the initial push. And that is what we're going to be looking for. Similar sort of situation here. You get that last final capitulation event, which in my opinion was the bottoming 30K zone that we can see right here. And we are now entering phase D after the capitulation accumulation bottom right here, the capitulation of the volume, less so than here, but you still see that consolidation, in my opinion, come to an end, come to a close. And now we've completed the accumulation bottom and we've created a series of higher lows as well as higher highs. So we're in a slight channel. I do think we're going to be breaking that channel and then continuing to the upside here. So let's draw it in a little bit more focus, but hopefully that gives you a better understanding. That's the two major zones there of what I'm currently looking at within the price action here in order to get a little slight edge within the market. So overall, that's going to be another indicator of why I think there's going to be some progression in the bulls for BTC soon. So let's go now onto a smaller time frame. Let's go onto a daily. And understanding that overall structure of the Wyckoff schematic in accumulation phase, we see the overall structure right here, this consolidation, the sideways consolidation. Now, the major zones that we're looking at is right now we are currently within this high, this lower high, this lower high, three lower highs connection right there, and turns into a descending zone, as well as you see this major level of descending zone. So right now I see this descending zone as well as the support, which is also a descending zone, and that's currently creating for me a nice wedge. That wedge will break. We're probably going to be seeing a nice correction somewhere above the 36.5K zone. Within this range, that's where our windup is going to be, and then we're going to be potentially doing a slight windup around 4K. That is where our major level of resistance is going to be, where we see this lower high, as we can see, nice key level right here, as well as our whole horizontal level of resistance. So that's going to be a major zone kind of right around here is going to be a key level of resistance where there's going to be a lot of sell pressure. Once that breaks, I do think that we're going to see a significant rally where not just Bitcoin, but a lot of alts are going to rise as well. So that's going to be the major zone that we're going to be anticipating is going to be the final point before we start to really see some momentum for Bitcoin along with the other alts within the market. But right now we're seeing just a nice consolidation with that midpoint there. We're seeing a descending zone. We're seeing a series of slightly lower lows, which is contracting the price, and we're seeing a nice ascending zone here. So overall, I do potentially, or I do think that it's going to be going up, but in the short term, I could potentially see this ascending zone maybe break to the downside. It hasn't yet. We will look in the small time frames to understand the potential bottom that we've seen within the price action, but it does look like we are forming a slight ascending zone, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a bottom and one last little consolidation. Maybe we even form like a slightly less ascending support zone where we squeeze up against this 36.5k zone, previous key level of resistance, and then we're going to be looking very strong to break this key level of resistance at 40k. And once that 40k level breaks, that's going to be my assumption that this key level of resistance within this schematic breaks, and we're going to be looking at some great opportunities for long side exposure within the phase E part of this schematic, which in my opinion is the completion, or in this case is the completion of the overall consolidation. And it's going to be creating a nice bottoming structure similar to what we saw within gold and what we're currently seeing within silver. There's a lot of structures where you see a series of lower lows turn into higher lows with a key level of resistance, which in this case is going to be that 40.6 40.5k zone for Bitcoin, which does make sense. Previous left or potential left shoulder, and it's the current key level of resistance for the right shoulder. And if the price of BTC does break that right shoulder at 40.5 40.6k for Bitcoin, I think that a lot of bears are going to be wishing that they bought the dip and not assuming that they are going to get that limit order fill at like 24 or 22. Some people are even anticipating 12. I don't think we're going to be dropping that far. I think the consolidation is sort of coming to a close, and the validation of my thesis and my speculation will be that 40.6-ish K level. So now we're going to be looking at a smaller time frame here. As we can see, this is the ascending zone of support, and we did have a head and shoulders right here, right up against that previous high. I did create a descending zone this way. We were consolidating, we dipped, and there was a little bit of hesitancy because I did have this a little bit higher up, connecting against the candle closures instead of the wick extensions of the wick, but I did inevitably connect it to this low right here of this wick, this hammer wick right here, and then you don't get a perfect one unless you do a little bit of an angle here, but it does look like it is forming that third higher low, this being the first low, second low, which is the higher low, and then we got our third low, which is the higher low of this low. So it does look like it's bottoming. It would be great to see one more validation of this higher low in order for us to then take this off. We're now then squeezing horizontally right here around the 36. And like we said, right here is going to be potentially maybe like an ascending wedge formation that will push the price up to the 40.5. And that's going to be that zone where it's going to be really looking promising for Bitcoin bulls. So we'll look at a smaller time frame here to discuss what we currently see right here. It could be a fractal if we really want to go down to the nitty gritty and look at a very small time frame. It could be a small fractal of what we're currently seeing within the larger time frame, because this is a prolonged period down. You're seeing a nice series of lower lows and lower highs with a key level of resistance at 34,000. So it does look, you know, we could take it down to a smaller time frame if we really wanted to, but we're going to keep it at this 2-hour time frame. So this is the head and shoulders. Let's go into the head and shoulders, which would be right here. You can see the left shoulder, you can see the head, and then this is the right shoulder. But it did not actually complete the target. If we're getting the target from the head to the neckline, copying that down, pushing it right here, that's going to be the potential area of significance for the head and shoulders. But it did not complete, which indicates to me that the bulls are holding that higher low, because this completion would still create a higher low from this low, so I wasn't super worried. But if we are able to actually break above this head and shoulders neckline, which we did, it is underlyingly very bullish, and we're seeing a nice contraction within the overall volume, as you can see within this 2-hour chart here. Very significant amount of buy pressure, or overall pressure within this candle, but you're seeing a very nice tight contraction within the volume. You're seeing a reduction in the overall volatility, which is a sign that overall volatility will have to increase at some point. If we're seeing a contraction in the volume and volatility, as well as the price action, at a certain point it's going to have to give, and I think it's going to be giving to the upside. So we might be seeing a slight pullback. We don't exactly know, but the overall consensus is now we're above the neckline on a smaller time frame. So that is an invalidation of this head and shoulders, which is underlyingly bullish. We did have a little bit of hesitation after we broke and then pulled back, and there was a little bit of a mess, not really a whole lot of clarity within the price action. But if it is able to break this key level of resistance at 36.5K, that will give me a lot more clarity, and it'll give me a lot more confidence that we're now heading into the 40.6K. Once it breaks 36.5K, right around there, that's going to be a pretty big boost in my confidence for the overall price action of BTC and really the cryptocurrency market altogether. And once we break 40.6K, I would be confident enough to be yelling from the rooftops that I think that BTC is in a really good opportunity to look for longs, especially if you're contracting just above 40K against this zone. Something similar to what we're, let's not open that. What we're like seeing in many instances, like for example right here, if we're seeing a big major move up, a nice contraction, and then a great formation where you're seeing a break in resistance turning into a new level of support and a major level of confluence. If you're seeing volume accumulation within the overall price action, there's a lot of indicators, but if you're seeing the clear trend and the clear overall structure that it's looking bullish, I think that this is a perfect opportunity just above the 40.6, 40.5K level of resistance to look for longs. So that's going to be my overall view on BTC. We're going to have a very quick look on the BTC CoT indicator. We did get our data for the week. There was a slight increase in the sellers and a slight increase in the buyers. Now, a really, really great opportunity and a great validation, if this were to occur, would be if we got a dip in the sell pressure for the institutional players in BTC CME futures, and then we get an increase in buyers, because that would then give us another squeeze or a decrease in delta. And every single time we saw a significant decrease in delta, which is the difference of the sellers and the buyers, we saw a great time or great opportunity to buy or go long. And we saw another contraction recently back in the 21st of May, and it would be great to see another one right before we start to see the completion of the consolidation phase here around the 40.5-ish K zone. So we're going to be anticipating that. Just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean that our thesis is incorrect. We've already seen it. It's come a little bit early, but our overall anticipation I don't think is incorrect. I think that we're going to be seeing a pretty strong push to the upside on the smaller time frame. We've invalidated head and shoulders. Let's just take that off the screen, and our current level of support is around 34K. We're pressing up against this descending zone of resistance, which has 1, 2, 3 validations, and this level of confluence around that 30, let's say 5K, 36K zone is going to give us a lot more confidence when it does inevitably break. So that's going to be my overall view. We're not really going to be looking at any other alts. I wanted to make it very clear cut and dry of what our viewpoint is and what we're currently expecting, because unless BTC is going to be recovering and at least consolidating and slowly progressively making some higher lows, my bad, I do think that the alts will stay calm, cool, and not really have the massive altcoin season that we were seeing and experiencing throughout the spring of this year. And that said, if BTC does start to break and start to look more promising, I think alts will be quick to pick up that increased volume and sentiment, because we've already seen altcoin season 1. I think altcoin season 2, which is the second half of the year, it will be a lot more aggressive and it will be a lot more volatile, but I think there's going to be a lot more appreciation in the prices of basically every single alt. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching. We're not really going to dive into really much else because this is the main focus that I think everyone in the crypto market needs to be looking at before we dive back into the alts, because I think that Dogecoin looks awesome, surprisingly. From a technical standpoint, I think that Cardano looks very solid. I think Solana looks very solid from a technical level. So it's just the patience and waiting until we get the confirmation that Bitcoin is not going to go lower, because if Bitcoin does fall and slip further down, potentially even, let's say, break the 30K, that's not impossible, anything can happen, we will have a serious situation within the altcoin market where there's going to be a massive dump, and we don't want to be experiencing that dump if we don't have to. So we're looking for that perfect sweet spot where we're going to get some more confirmation within BTC, and that'll give us more confidence to have more exposure in the more speculative alts that are definitely more lucrative if you are in them at the right time. So thank you very much for watching. We'll definitely be covering the alts in good time. Until next time, have a good one.